Well, hi, hello, and welcome to Innovation Trends that will shape data on Kubernetes in 2024. Today's awesome webinar is sponsored by Portworx, by Pure Storage, and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I am absolutely thrilled that I get to be your moderator for this discussion because this is an exciting day. I love when we get to talk about these trends, when we're looking ahead, and data on Kubernetes is absolutely supercharging the pace of innovation in our organizations. It's allowing for that scalability that we want, growth on a whole new level. We are getting faster, we're getting more efficient, and now we are all turning our attention to those big, pressing, important, flashing neon signs, and that is, of course, AI, security, and streamlining our multi-cloud environments, getting that efficiency up, right? That is so important. And so here's what we've got planned for you today. We're going to have a fun and interactive conversation. We've got two expert presenters here with us from Portworx by Pure Storage. We've got some really cool conversational sections. The experts are going to be watching live chat, responding to you live as we go through. They've got some poll questions for you. So it's just going to be a bit more of a conversation, a bit more of a flow, and a little bit less of that structured presentation. And those are my favorite styles of conversations that we get to have. It's going to be a very cool day. I am going to go through a few of the usual housekeeping things just to make sure, if you haven't joined us before, that you know how to get the most out of your day today. And hey, if you have and you're an old hat, grab some coffee really quick, but get back here very quickly because we're going to jump in and get started, and it is time to get rolling. So let's start out with our usual little guided tour of your audience console. So again, the most important part of today is getting involved, asking those questions. Send your feedback, your thoughts, your shout outs, your high fives, your, all the many questions that you have. And there's so many questions to ask, right? So if you want to get involved today, we're going to start out with that questions window. So find that on your console right now and say hi and hello. I'm checking. I see Angie, I see Dusty, I see Zhang, I see Brian. We've got some great highs and hellos coming in. Keep those coming. So let us know how you're doing right now. Give that a little practice or test run. You're also going to use that question section if you do have any technical issues during the webinar today. Knock on wood, as always. But let's say something comes up and you're not totally sure how to handle it. Your very first step is a browser refresh. Give yourself a browser refresh. Clear out all the little tech gremlins that way. If that doesn't work, shoot us a message there in that question section, and the Actual Tech Media team will be there to help out. Okay, so interactive question asking, interactive conversations, help and wellness. I was going to say health and wellness, all available to you in that question section. Your next stop on the guided tour is the handout section. So click into the handout section right now. Make sure you spend a little time exploring that today because there's some great resources and takeaways. You are going to want those follow-ups after we wrap. This is just the jumping off point, right? And there's lots more conversation to be had. So be sure you are clicking into that handout section and get those resources. And I can tell you that our experts have a lot of awesome additional resources tucked into their presentation as well. So lots of cool things coming your way. All right, now it is not just awesome content that we are giving away today. We also have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing. We're going to do that at the end of our webinar. Of course, you do need to be here live and present with us at the webinar, but where else would you want to be today other than right here having this conversation? So if you have any questions about whether or not you meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions, go back to that handy dandy handouts tab that we were chatting about, click and scroll down. Full T's and C's are waiting for you there. If that wasn't enough, we also have another prize giveaway for you all. This one goes to the best question asked. So $50 Amazon gift card going to the best question asked throughout the webinar. Now, as I said, our experts are going to be watching that chat. They're going to be watching those the questions coming in as they go. So as we're going through, they'll be interacting with these questions, but there's only so many questions that we can get to in a session. So whether or not you are asked and answered live, or you just get that question in, you are entered to win. We're going to look over all the questions asked after we wrap, and then we'll send out that $50 best question Amazon gift card. So stay tuned for that. Okay, my friends, well, that is it for the housekeeping. It is time to get into the good stuff, and that means it's time to bring out our expert speakers. I'm going to get them out on camera here with me in just a moment, but I am so excited to introduce you all to John Owens, Director, Cloud Strategy, Portworx by Pure Storage, and Justin Frederickson, Director, Cloud Native Architects, Portworx by Pure Storage. John and Justin, let's get you on out here with me and get this conversation. Justin, I am going to hand things right on over to you. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jess. I'm super excited to speak with everybody today. And what we're going to talk about today is some innovation and trends that will shape data on Kubernetes here in 2024. We've got a great little agenda for everybody today. We're going to go through some quick intros, which we've already done, and then we're going to talk about our impressions and some emerging trends, some general observations. It's, as Jess alluded to, it's going to be pretty fluid and pretty dynamic, and we will have lots of room for some Q&A, as well we will also have some polls as we go along. This is I think the third time we've gone through a conversation like this, so hopefully it's entertaining and informative for each of you guys. But to set the table a little bit, I'm going to turn it over to Jo. That's what we all use nicknames here at Portworx, so I'll refer to Jo as Jo instead of John. So hopefully that's okay with everybody. But Jo, why don't you go ahead and set the table a little bit here, and let's talk a little bit about how we got here.
And also short for Justin Fredrickson is JFred. So if anyone hears me say that, I'm actually talking about Justin. So
All right, fair enough.
he said, we are using as many nicknames as we can. And but anyway, so um, I'm probably not going to admit at what part of this little timeline, I guess, is what we're showing here, where I kind of entered the fray of working with technology. But all of
It was
us have
definitely
seen,
reel to reel tape. It was definitely reel to
yes,
reel tape, without a doubt. Yeah.
I'm not that far back, but the, but the thing is that you see is in each one of these transitions, if when we move from mainframe to open systems, and from open systems to virtual machines, and from virtual machines now to containers, there has been an opportunity for innovation. What can we do to change or make things better as we kind of make this transition to the new systems? And some of that, could have been back with like Veritas file system and the mainframe to open system days. Like, how do we convert that data? How do we manage it and protect it? And all those fun things. And then going into virtual machines, like the APIs around backing things up. Like, I don't know how many 10 years ago I talked about how to back up VMs. Well, more than that, probably 15 years ago we were talking about
Yeah.
that, and the APIs to go along with it, and the innovation that it took, and a lot of people built very great solutions around that, including things like pure storage with flash array and being able to replicate and make them easier, vvols, all kinds of awesome stuff to help your most important workloads that run your business be great in a virtual machine. Now we are probably, I would say, in the middle of, we're not at the beginning of that next hoop or arrow into that magic cloud looking thing on my far right, maybe on the left, depending on, I don't know how it flips or mirrors for everybody. But there's a definite need, and some of y'all, I'm in Atlanta, so I can say y'all. Some of y'all probably wondered, what about data in Kubernetes? That's one of the things is, weren't you supposed to run data outside of Kubernetes, or don't put statefulness inside of Kubernetes? Well, it's here and it's a thing, right? People have, in spite of the original intention or the impressions of the first developers of Kubernetes, people are now putting stateful applications in it, all around the world, from our perspective, from the biggest financials to SaaS companies to healthcare. I've seen a little bit of everything over the last 3 years when it comes to this, and during that transition, we have to think about, what does it take to protect that data? What does it take to make it hybrid, make it mobile, make it multi-cloud? Because in there's people aren't just moving to containers, JFred, just because it's fun. It's because they want a
Right.
particular outcome. I want to be able to move it to the cloud. I want to be able to, build it into my CI/CD pipeline. Like, there's reasons there, and those same reasons they need for the data. The data has to go somewhere. So that's kind of the
Right.
level set for everyone, and kind of what we do, and why it's important, and kind of where we are in this transition, and why this is so important. And I think we can go to the next slide. We might as well go to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
next slide.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
that-
I think yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I think, suffice it to say, what we're really experiencing right now is one of those generational inflection points around a major transition from a technology standpoint. When I had an opportunity to attend a bunch of conferences last year, and in particular at both KubeCon in Chicago, as well as later in Vegas at the Gartner IOCS conference, it seems like Kubernetes is really met the mainstream. And so as we go forward with some of our findings, I'm going to go ahead and throw up a slide here that actually is just a catalog of what we saw from the session content specifically at CNCF's hosted KubeCon in Chicago. And as you can see, there's obviously at the moment there's a ton of elements around AI, but you can see the second largest is really around how do we manage data at scale inside of Kubernetes. And I think what I really felt like in my conversations at all those conferences, as well as in the conversations with customers, is that as data in Kubernetes is now completely mainstreamed and just a status quo of where people are going, it's bringing about a lot of interesting challenges for some of the individuals that maybe have started in this space with stateless or ephemeral workloads. People are having to think more in depth around, does my infrastructure have the capability of providing the performance characteristics? Is it ready? Is my Kubernetes distribution and is my environment ready for business continuity, disaster recovery, or backup, or being able to be performant enough to work on that complex Kafka workload that's maybe feeding an AI workload? So let's talk a little bit. We'll continue down that conversation, but let's talk a little bit about the sessions and what we saw as the real trends, because that's why everybody's here. So let's talk about it.
And there's also one topic or one term that we really wanted to hit on too is, and I want to ask you about this, Jay-Fred, before I talk
Sure.
about AI. Once you start me on AI, we're never going back.
Okay, fair enough. All right, yeah, you throw me the question. What you
And
got?
it's around golden paths, right? And
Yes.
Merle talked about this with some of our customers. I think on a webcast that was broadcast from KubeCon. But what does that actually mean, and like why is that important to the people on this call?
Yeah. So the notion around a golden path, or I believe Gartner refers to it as a paved road. It's actually really critical and important when we start talking about Kubernetes. Unlike what we experienced to some degree in the early days of virtualization, in the Kubernetes space, it's predominantly open source. It's been nurtured and developed through the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, through the generation of special interest groups to go drive particular features and functions, and that's part of what makes it so exciting. But it's also part of what makes it so complex. And by complex, I mean that there is no one specific way for all customers to journey down the road. There could be common themes that are common across most customers, and I hope for the sake of what I sell, Portworx as a storage solution for Kubernetes that lives inside of Kubernetes natively. Hopefully, that's a part of everybody's design needs, but in general, what we see, I think I've heard this from a couple other commentators as well, 2024 might be the year of the bundle in order to create a golden pathway or to create a paved road for how you're going to do things. And that may mean that you pick this distro that's really particularly good for AI/ML, or you choose this security product in order to do your image-based scanning, or you use this provider to drive better orchestration, or we've seen in Portworx in particular, when I walked down all the aisles at the various conferences, I saw, hey, I got to partner with them. Oh yeah, I should work with them. And so I think that's a big element of what we're going to see continuing in 2024, but also moving forward in 2025. There's so many SIGs that have been promoted out into full-fledged products that the market is it can be daunting for customers, and hopefully what we can help provide assistance with at Portworx, but also in the partner community and other communities, is that we can help establish the more common paved road and golden pathway, so to speak. So hopefully that gives you a good foundation there, Jo, on what I'm talking about.
It helps me. Hopefully, it helps everybody else, but it helps me a ton.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
when it comes to like this graph, right? Actually, and for everyone's enjoyment, I actually had ChatGPT create this graph because might as well have the analytics get done by the computer and not by me. But One
Yeah,
thing is, this
absolutely.
is the number. So when we're talking about Kubernetes, we're talking about what is interesting or what's going on, kind of a trend when it comes to Kubernetes is around AI. Like this is just, these are mentions, number of sessions with mentions of AI within that catalog, like basically the session catalog. And it's interesting, right? And it comes down to obviously how we can approach AI in a couple of ways with Kubernetes. But I think before we dive too much into it, I want to run the poll. Jay Fred, do you want to
Oh,
jump?
yeah,
You
yeah,
want to
yeah.
jump?
Let's go ahead and
Because I think the
go
next
forward to the
question is
poll.
about this. So for everyone out
Yep,
there, please answer this poll. Right? We want to have interaction. We want to be able to kind of tailor this towards what's important to you.
yep.
So start
And
answering.
yeah, while they're filling that out, let's talk a little bit about where are you seeing. I kind of view AI as there's kind of two directions basically that you could see. You can see both Kubernetes being used and leveraged specifically to deliver an AI solution. Maybe it's the data pipeline. Maybe it's management of just running PyTorch or TensorFlow to get it into your GPU. But then there's another direction as well. So where do you see the two common themes? The other direction, of course, being how can we leverage AI to make Kubernetes better or more responsive to what the customers need? So perhaps you can hit on one or both of those.
So, I mean, obviously, from my perspective, right, there's a way to use AI to make Kubernetes better. Like, that's kind of the way I think of it. And
Yep.
that can be down to tools that can help interpret the logs, make it easier to read, make it easier to deploy, those types of things. I
Yep.
think that's absolutely, it still takes a little bit of expertise to run Kubernetes, and which is great for us technical people, right? We love that. That makes our jobs
Yep.
very secure. But we want to make we want to make it easier. We want to make it deeper for everybody. And I think that's really key. Is two ideas I have, and Jay Fred, you could add if you have another. Is around
Sure.
security, like obviously AI being able to detect things that are going on that are abnormalities or
Yes.
just things that are wrong, or being able to detect you know outages that are about to happen. I
Correct.
think that's a
Yeah.
huge one. Like you can look at logs and you can see like, hey, this container is about to out of memory and it's going to bounce. Like maybe we try to do that at a more convenient time, or
Right.
scale the app in order to do the workload. Those kind of things. I think there's some cool things there. But
Yeah.
I think the other part is around running things on Kubernetes. Do you want to tie into that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, in particular, I think the most common one that we see out there are just the chatbots, for example, that are using LLMs in order to just make it easier to use the products. Or we also see a variety of customers for any number of their AI use cases. So whether it's you put the advanced fraud threat detection analysis, or just gaining business insights out of that data, you can often start running an LLM just inside the framework of what you've got going in your Kubernetes environment. And actually, there's a question in here where it talks about like some examples of stateful apps. Well, your training data sets for your AI model, they're stateful. You're going to want to keep updating the training data sets in that particular environment. So that's a very basic example. But in general, just to kind of expand beyond that, we see customers putting all sorts of stateful workloads in their environments, because the promise of their platforms is made even better when they can attach the stateful database that might have user profile information, or a shopping cart, or elements of e-commerce that are need to be persisted through the customer experience. Those are all examples of where we see stateful workloads. And I imagine expanding the AI components is just going to simply make it, from a platform engineering standpoint, easier to drive all the things that are needed, if everything is all resident and native inside of Kubernetes from day one. So we're yeah. So anyway, I think
So
that's
I'm
good.
going to show the results of the poll here for
Sure.
everyone.
Yeah.
Can
Wow.
everyone see that? Right, like I think that everyone out there, they could see kind of the percentages, right? And from what JFred was just talking about, right, building internal tools and leveraging API, right, leveraging an API, those internal tools also are going to run in Kubernetes, and they're going to really be, they're going to have state to them. So whether that is, a retrieval augmented, generation where you have a set of data that you're pulling from, and you may be keeping that on premises or in a cloud provider. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just using the API from OpenAI is like obviously the bigger name, but like there's all kinds of them out there. I'm going to leverage those, right? I think it's telling to see what people are actually wanting to do. Is like, while there's some data science research groups out there that are going to be continually building these LLMs and making them better and better, and that's going to be their business. But we're all,
Yeah.
not all of us are in the business of training a whole new AI. Some
Yes.
people will,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's interesting. Like there's a few, like 25% said they're gonna build that whole platform, which is great.
Yeah.
A majority, and that's actually kind of shocking to me that that's number two. Just to be completely transparent with everyone, I'm excited that people are looking to do that. And I mean, obviously that has its own data, like the training data, the outputs of the models, all those things are all get written to disk or to persistence somewhere. I'm not allowed to say disk. I
Yeah.
do work for storage, and building the internal tools though is where like that could scale. Like we could have a lot of uh, customers out there that are going to leverage an API to use a model, but they're going to build their own creativity, their own things around that, and all of that can run within a Kubernetes cluster that's on-prem, that's in the cloud. You set that up, and honestly, you could be doing that within a day versus trying to build a whole new model. I just wanted, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
results. But if anything else you want to point out on that?
Nothing that's actually in the results, and maybe we could answer the question slightly differently, perhaps. But one thing that I do see that's interesting is that um, you know, the training data is really, really important to feed what you're trying to accomplish from an AI perspective, and that proximity to the GPU is really key. And so, what I do see in some customer cases is that, and this is a unique value proposition that Portworx to some degrees brings to the table, is that we help make it easier to join Kubernetes clusters all the way from the edge to a primary colo location or to the public cloud. And so the idea here that I think that Kubernetes, there's some data points out there. I think it's Gartner, that something like 60 or 70% of all AI deployments have some component of Kubernetes somewhere in the design and the architecture. And I think that what we're going to see in a lot of cases is that um, you know Kubernetes is key to the data pipeline movement to get it close to that GPU. So it could be in a retail application, getting data from the stores and from the points of sales, or in agriculture, or in extraction based businesses, or in the financial services businesses where we see point of sale information. That all happens distributed around the globe. And so having a data pipeline that is web scale in its approach, I think is something that I'm it's not I think it's something I'm seeing within my customers in as many unique and different ways as you can imagine it. I was in an executive briefing in the fall where, of all things, there was a meat processing facility, and they wanted to use AI to determine the efficiency of the butchers that were on the floor. And they were using cameras in order to take photos to ascertain what percentage of meat was removed off of the product. And I thought that was really fascinating. And if a meat processor can think of an interesting way to drive an edge to core use case around processing, that just gives you an idea of how creative all the thoughts are out there and all the approaches that it might be able to be used. And it's just an exciting time because I think what will inevitably be accelerated as well as the pace of innovation, because you pointed out earlier, like you could just put code into your AI environment, or ask code to be generated, and then you can go and edit it, as opposed to having to come up with it from ground zero. So Anyway, interesting stuff in that regard. So you've got a new deck up here, or a new slide up here talking about AI. So what's the latest here?
Well, I thought we were still talking about AI, so we wanted to put up we didn't need to show the poll the whole time. But what's funny is that you did kind of just answer the question around, could Kate's adoption in the edge computing
Yeah.
in edge computing increase leveraging AI applications. He just gave a great example, and if they could use it for meat processing, butchering, think of what you could do in your business, right? And so I think there's definitely that there's a way to do that, right, where we can use it. We have also other customers are using it in manufacturing plants for finding defects. There's all
Yep.
kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we have a placeholder for it, but one of the emerging trends I see as well is lighter weight distributions of Kubernetes using K3s out at the edge in some cases, or we have an interesting use case that we've seen in a SaaS customer where they used an SIG project from Loft Labs called vCluster. And vCluster uses K3s inside of it just to make it more agile and responsive to be able to run virtual clusters inside of a single cluster. And so it's innovations like that that I think not only make Kubernetes more relevant everywhere, but also gives entree and an opening for where we can leverage AI in environments, and where can we get the data. I mean, before long, maybe every single autonomous driving car out there, maybe they're running a K3s cluster out there in order to gather all that information. Who knows? Send it over 6G to go update learning and inference cycles. Who knows what's going to happen in the future as we close the door on that, or we open doors rather with those types of approaches. So it's interesting, such an exciting time, and so much more variation than some of the other inflection points and transitions, because it is so vast where it has the potential to be utilized. So
Yeah, and I'm actually, my little opinion on the vCluster thing, because I feel like that's pretty cool, is that's pretty nice for, segregating certain workloads or users or groups without having to, give them access to the cloud to build their own, or, all
yeah,
kinds of stuff. Build it up, they can get stateful, all the, the Portworx goodness goes up into it, and you're ready to run, right? So it's,
yeah.
for SaaS companies, or if you have a lot of developers, it's kind of a cool thing that it's a cluster as a service, but it's kind of a cluster inside of a cluster. It kind of makes it fast and easy. I feel like that's pretty cool innovation.
Well, one of the things I think that both vCluster as well as Portworx brings to the equation is that, and this kind of harkens back to the golden pathway and the paved roads that we were talking about, which is that there's so many different ways to tackle Kubernetes, and there's so many different distros, and when we're start talking about private cloud versus the hyperscaler public clouds, if you don't have specific solutions in place, you're going to end up having very bespoke and different approaches depending on where you're running Kubernetes. So like in the public cloud, you've got different managed identities versus API-based tokens for authentication. You've got different networking considerations. You've got different storage considerations. And so utilization of projects like vCluster, or usage of products like Portworx to provide a consistency of storage experience does allow customers to be able to stamp out a consistent API-driven approach that is not iterative, but declarative across all the platforms, as opposed to being uniquely bespoke. And that's an exciting trend as well. That hopefully, I mentioned bundles. Maybe we can get more bundles that help accelerate that adoption for customers. I think we have another poll coming up. Do I want to move to the next poll, or do we need some foundation setting for the next poll?
No, let's just run it and see what happens. Like I'm feeling like
All right.
feeling cool today.
All right. Okay. So I will set the table just a little bit here. Everybody can read, so you guys can start reading. But one of the things that has really, I wouldn't say it's caught us by surprise, but it has the speed by which it's occurred has largely been driven by some of the behavior that Broadcom is simply engaged in as they've interacted with their existing install base. And so that's created some of the urgency here. but also it's a reflection, I think, not necessarily that Broadcom's doing complete evil with regards to their ownership of VMware, but there is a trend in general where people are seeing the promise of Kubernetes and they're moving towards it, and so that is kind of lessening their focus to some degree on VMware, and so we see this come up a lot. And the general evolution prior to this year that I would often see is a customer who's first getting exposed to Kubernetes, just departmentally or organizationally, they'll often just start running a Kubernetes distro on top of their hypervisor, typically ESX. And this the emerging changes out there have kind of, I don't know, driven a like a groundswell transition of some sorts. And now customers are realizing, what, actually I could just run Kubernetes bare metal if I don't necessarily need the hypervisor in the mix, or perhaps I need other options. So anyway, well, let's dig into the numbers here a little bit. So the question was, for workloads running on VMware, which options are you considering for a potential exit off the platform? And it looks like the winner, and this doesn't surprise me at all, is relocate them to the cloud. So just a complete refactoring and movement away from running VMware entirely, and I imagine that's starting to move them directly onto EKS or onto AKS or GKE, and that's what I interpret these responses coming back as. Is that about what you're seeing as well, Jo?
Well, scroll down real quick. Make sure you scroll on that poll, because
now it's updating real time. So now it's just another hypervisor and management ecosystem has jumped into the lead. So
yeah. So there's definitely, of the people that want to move, right? There is interest in moving them. Like if you combine those two, there's at least want to go somewhere else, and there's definitely interest in that. And what we've seen as a trend is really is seeing where our customers want to go and around their interactions with VMware, right? And Kubernetes being a viable solution. Like if you're going to move it to the cloud or you're going to go to another hypervisor or management ecosystem, that's definitely something that could happen there. So, and that with that, like, I did throw up some news here. Let's see.
Yep.
Right. Like, there's some partners out there that are in, and I don't know, if the audience, if they follow this as closely as I do, because obviously it's something very near and dear to what I do every day, but the around the partners, termination notice, or even what's this next one? Whatever it is, right? And that's all partner based.
There it is. Yeah.
Around, hey, what, things are going to change over the next couple of years. Where are we going to get? Where are we going to go to? What are we going to do? And there is a viable option to stay, right? There's just maybe a change of the way you interact with VMware during that point. So that's interesting data coming back from the poll. What do you think about that, JFred? Is when it comes to options, or where we see trends? Because we do see some customers moving around.
Yeah, and we looks like we did get a bunch more responses of folks not planning on moving, and so this is what's the beauty of this educational session is that what's out there from an option is something that maybe folks aren't aware of, and that is that the CNCF had an SIG around making KVM speak Kubernetes, and out of that came the project that's known as KubeVirt. And KubeVirt is interesting in that you can run traditional monolith VMs just on top of your Kubernetes distribution, and it's most common, or it's probably the strongest with Red Hat OpenShift. But there are other distros. You can run it on vanilla if you so desire. And what we're seeing is, for customers that are embracing the journey towards containerization and Kubernetes, this is a nice way for them to, in some cases, de-risk the transformation. So, a lot of folks, when we first put this out there, a lot of people were relocating them to the cloud. Well, that transition is not without risk. And so we're seeing customers use KubeVirt as a playground to host things as they transition it over to a native Kubernetes-based design. And there's other elements where some workloads just may never really make sense in a containerized form factor. Maybe it's an old Windows monolith, or it's got a legacy technical debt associated with it, and a new architecture is being designed, but you need to have an intermediary state, and that's where KubeVirt, I think, really comes into play, and that's where we see customers getting rather excited about it, because no disrespect to the other hypervisors out there, but if you have a company mandate to drive your architecture, either because of an independent software vendor that's part of your ecosystem. We see that a lot in the small credit unions and in financial services environments. There'll be some small IBM application, and IBM is saying, "Hey, you've got to run this next generation on Kubernetes." Or I actually anticipate seeing that in the healthcare vertical at some point or another, with all the ISVs around electronic medical records. Some of those that are SaaS offerings already, they're running their EMR platforms on Kubernetes today. So it's going to happen in a number of different ways, and so moving towards a KubeVirt approach seems to make a lot of sense for customers that are in that vein. And for the 25 folks that are not currently planning on moving, totally expected. I'm not surprised at all. It took 10 years to get everything onto VMware.
And I want to ask too, like, anyone that's willing to share in the chat, in the Q&A or whatever, put, of the 25 people that said, I'm not going to move, maybe put why are you thinking that? Like, share that with the group. I think that's totally valid, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely some choices. We see one example from a Red Hat talk that I went to was NOAA, the National Oceanographic, what is it? They do the weather app, right?
Yes.
Like,
Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, I think it is.
Yes. And they're running VMs managed by OpenShift Kubernetes, right? And they don't have any containers, or they have no intention to changing those apps into containers, but it gives them an easy way to manage it. They can deploy them. They can manage it centrally, via OpenShift. So there's a lot of goodness there for them, because they actually run it in all of their different weather sites around the country to monitor our weather. So whenever you get a warning that there's a tornado coming, for us in the South, that happens. That data went through Kubernetes, even though it was a VM.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll move off of these slides a little bit, and we can move forward here to. Well, this is just a little bit of background on the MarketScape with regards to it. But I wanted to make sure we hit on all the topics that we wanted to cover. Were there any other trends or SIGs that Jo, that before we continue on with more of the questions and elements, were there any other ones that you really wanted to hit on that you thought was a trend for the coming year?
So, we've talked a little bit about AI, obviously a lot bit about AI. We talked about golden paths, vCluster as a trend, and VM's possible movement as a trend. And I think the other big one is, and it kind of is illuminated by this article from IDC, which is Kubernetes moving into the mainstream. I think that for the last couple of years, people have known it's there. They're a little concerned, like, hey, maybe I don't know this, or it's a little outside my realm, or it's too new. Like, is it going to go like OpenStack? And a few companies are going to adopt it all the way, but everyone else is going to stick with what they know. And what I see when one of these analyst firms like IDC or Gartner makes a report like this is that it's actually being acknowledged as a solution that is being used in broad industry. Right. So it's not just it's just the .com people that live, that are in the Bay Area by Justin, or it's not just the big banks on the East Coast, right? It is a little bit of everywhere. We see it in, customers that are doing IoT in, buildings, like they're measuring your temperature and all
Right.
those things. See it, you know what I mean? So a report like this, even though like, hey, yes, this is a little self-serving because they did like us, but is that it shows that overall that this is something that is here to stay, right? And it's going
Yep.
to be a part of the conversation for the next several years.
Well,
You want
it's funny actually. Well, I can riff off of it a little bit in that just what people in the space are calling themselves. So like when I first started in this space, everybody still referred to it as, oh, this is the DevSecOps world. Well, for whatever reason, we dropped the sec, and then the next year it was DevOps. And then this year, the conversation and some of the job search queries and a lot of the conversation that I heard at the various conferences was around the rise of platform engineering and the platform engineer. And I think even the reflection of that change in nomenclature is an indication of where Kubernetes is in terms of its mainstream adoption and what the focus is and challenges are that people have to engage in. Of course, the application owners and the dev teams and the op teams they're still in existence, but underneath all of them now is this reflection that, hey, as customers engage in this environment, there needs to be a specific architect or an individual that's responsible for driving how the architecture is going to provide the performance necessary to meet the customer needs. And by customer, I mean, the developers. If they're running a Jenkins environment, or Atlassian based environments, they need to have the basic performance to do what they need to do to have their jobs. They need portability, for example. Maybe their dev environment is cloud based, and they need a more easy and effective methodology to go put it into prod that is in the private cloud. And it's a platform engineer's role to really kind of drive that versus what we might have had in the past, which is siloed functionality between those environments and a bespoke and unique company by company methodology to move between those two modalities. And it's an exciting time to have a little bit more maturity around this. As a long-standing, infrastructure person, who I've spent a lot of my professional IT career worrying about that type of plumbing elements. To me, it actually makes a ton of sense that now it's something that folks need to be cognizant of. To run a specific workload in AWS with the resources that's provided there is a different set of skills and knowledge than to run that same workload in Azure. And these are challenging things for people to navigate. And a specialist like a platform engineer is likely in the best position to be able to ascertain the underlying infrastructure components that they need to cobble together to create their golden path or their paved road. To me, it's a reflection of the maturity overall that I see within the marketplace.
So there's a question, and since I saw it first, I'm going to ask you then. And I said we're
All
going to
right.
answer it.
All right.
So is,
All right.
as organizations embrace multi-cloud environments, how does Kubernetes contribute to streamlining data management and ensuring seamless portability across various cloud providers?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I don't know, that could be in the early running for the $50 award. Geez. What Kubernetes brings to the equation is the common framework, and it gets most of the way there. What I see in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley is that there's still a strong predilection towards DIY, and you can absolutely, if you're running Kubernetes in each of those locales, you can customize ways in which you can export and import into those environments. It's fairly bespoke. It's a fair amount of hacking around, but when you start engaging with different partners that have some exposure and experience in this area, either Portworx has this capability, but Red Hat OpenShift has been working in this space for quite some time, working on this as well. It starts to make it a little bit easier. And in particular for our product, what we do is we have a small little key value database that allows us to, in theory, glue multiple Kubernetes clusters together. So you can have a public cloud environment that's connected to your on-prem Red Hat OpenShift environment. So you'd be running, say, EKS in Amazon and running, Red Hat OpenShift. You put Portworx as the stateful software-defined storage overlay that's native to Kubernetes, and now you have a mechanism where you can actually move that stateful workload between the two environments. And so it's about this bundle that I started the conversation with. On your own, you can do it, but it's a lot of your own intellectual horsepower and coding capabilities to make it happen in a declarative function. Whereas if you're expanding into the SIG world to the various products that are out there, you start getting to a little better automation. If we're talking about CI/CD, using a tool like Armory, or using Argo, or using other orchestration tools like Kubernetes, there's a lot of ways that you can start creating your paved road, and all of it is possible by the open source nature and the spirit that is created by the CNCF. It makes it a little bit different than other inflection points that we've gone through where there was one dominant vendor. And I think ultimately that's for the best. Not having a single vendor kind of flexing their muscle around will mean that we might not ever get into an exit strategy like what we're seeing with VMware to some degree, or that at least groundswell interest. The nature of open source CNCF based Kubernetes means that there's going to be so many different options in so many ways, and a lot of them are going to be driven around specifically multi-cloud. So that was a long rambling answer, but hopefully I hit it on a little bit. I tried not to make it too much of a commercial for us, because it's not truly about Portworx. It's really about the nature of what Kubernetes represents as a cloud native platform.
And so there's another question as I'm looking at them. The good ones are coming in. What safeguards?
Mine aren't refreshing. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got to. I sorted them by newest, and all of a sudden they showed up. So, safeguards on how Kubernetes integrates with data to keep it secure, and that's actually kind of going back to what JFred was saying. Is you need a platform that's built for that, and Kubernetes really was built to orchestrate where the applications go, but it doesn't really have that tie into the data. That's what Portworx does. That's different and special, and yes, we actually have, the ability to do authentication on the data. So no one's mounting it that shouldn't be mounting it, or encrypting it with keys that you hold. So if you're in a cloud provider and you don't want them data mining it or whatever, like if they actually do that, who knows? But we can encrypt it, those types of things. And so we basically, that's why I jumped on this question, because it's like a thing we do is that, we can keep it secure for you, right? We add that to Kubernetes and provide those safeguards. When JFred was talking about de-risk, that's another one, right? Like, you don't want to move to it if it's just going to make it available on the internet for people to steal your data, right? That would be super bad. So we add that for you.
Yeah. There are a lot of questions here about AI. And one of them, I think, is one that I think is going to be right up your wheelhouse, Jo, because you've played around. You got some things planned for our sales kickoff that I think are interesting as well, just fun stuff. But everything's trending towards AI. For those behind the curve a bit, when it comes to data analytics specifically, what would be the best way to start?
So what I did to start, I don't know what's the best way. What I did is start looking at some of the open source models, just learning how they work, right? So there's a group out there called Olama. They have an open source, really an API gateway. You can run it it runs on Linux, it runs on a Mac. I think they're coming with a Windows version. I'll just commit that to those guys' roadmap. You can run it locally, you could download a model, you can start playing with it, right? You can do things, API calls against it, all kinds of cool stuff. That's pretty nice way to start, right? And then the other one is there's a few, I think it's the weirdest name ever, but Hugging Face. They have I don't know why that's their name, but they're out there. They actually have open models and samples too. Like they have a little thing called Spaces where people will build a model. They'll launch, they'll have it where you can test it out and play with it and see if it does what you want it to do. And so you can do that with with AI. And when it comes to analytics, it's probably a little more nuanced. When it depends on what you mean by analytics, and like if you're talking about like, hey, I need to crunch numbers or data sets, those types of things. I got into that via just learning Python. Like, I don't know, like every Python class ends up being like a data science, data analytics class a little bit. So it's a lot of that's built in. And because a lot of the AI tools are also built in Python, like PyTorch, those kind of things, TensorFlow, it all kind of, you all come together right there. So anyways, easy way to start. Open Olama, cool little tool. Download it. It's fun way to get an LLM on your local machine.
Fantastic. And what's the? Well, I'll skip it. I will get to Paul. Filio has a question around, and maybe I'll take this one. Could Kubernetes adoption and edge computing increase by leveraging AI applications, and if so, in what ways? So I'll give you an example here. Is that when we're talking about the edge, sometimes you're understandably bound by low bandwidth components, and so when we think about IoT, Internet of Things types approaches to doing AI, i.e., autonomous driving. So if I have, 1 million Tesla cars out there, to actually send all the meaningful data from a logging and analysis perspective would just be too much. And so being able to push the AI components out there to cull down the needful amount of logs and information in order to update a training data set for a new learning and inference cycle, that's really, really meaningful. We've got other customers that we've been talking to that say they do hardware tests for aviation, for example, and certain types of airplanes and rockets and other things. They just generate enormous amounts of log data, petabytes of data in some cases, terabytes in others, and gigabytes in even the smallest form factors. There's just a data transfer issue there, and if you can use AI to pare down that amount of information to be the meaningful data set that you're actually trying to find and unearth, that can transform the speed and usefulness by which we're moving those data sets around in order to drive improvements for environments. Like, for example, that early use case that I gave an example is that they actually have the GPUs all the way out in the meat processing facilities because they don't want to send in these remote locations, they don't want to send all that image data. And so they run it against the AI and the GPU at the edge in that particular case because a low bandwidth, it necessitates those components. So I personally view that AI will solve some of the challenges associated with data capture by giving us the meaningful data that's relevant. And that probably is going to be true in a security and a firewall perspective as well. If we'll have the original source data, but if we can cull it down to the more meaningful informations that's been triggered or known to be an advanced threat, that's going to make time to relevance for that particular data so much more informative.
So what's unfortunate is there's more questions, but we'll probably have to answer those offline because we're almost out of time. And I want to give everyone a chance to scan some of these barcodes, QR codes, barcode, I guess. But this is a report from around platform engineering from Gartner, and that what we see is kind of like the next generation of DevOps. I think that's a pretty, if everyone wants to take a picture of that, I'll give you like 10 more seconds. And of course, we can always send these out if you're interested later as a follow-up. But in addition to that is this is a interview that our GM or the original CEO of Portworx did with around Ford and how they're utilizing Kubernetes, and they've been doing it for a while. But they're a happy Portworx customer. You can get some more information on that there. Jay Fred, you want to add anything about that one?
Sorry, I was sneak previewing some questions. What was your question for me? Sorry.
Oh, just if you wanted to say more about the interview with Ford, but I'm going to move on to some of the other ones here. No.
I think
Yeah.
it's just a great another additional interesting data point around how we can be integral to an edge or a robo type use case. We've seen a couple instances where we're changing out manufacturing lines that maybe were running isolated in a vSAN environment, and now they want to modernize. And the driver wasn't in that particular case for Ford; had nothing to do with VMware or anything about that. It just was, hey, this is a more CI/CD blue-green deployment model that will drive better resiliency and efficiency. So a more traditional reason for why to go to Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So that was Ford in particular. But also just in general, so many creative use cases in that regard. The question that I was like occupying all my attention was this last one from Rahil Shah. As we are discussing regarding the customer's preference to migrate workloads from VMware, which options are we considering as an exit? Of the respondents, 6 people indicated in the poll, as organizations embrace multi-cloud environments, how does Kubernetes contribute to streamlining data management and ensuring seamless portability across various cloud providers? Is that the one? That's the one you've already
We
asked me,
talked
I
about
think.
that. We talked about that. Yeah. So
Okay.
let's.
All right. Got it.
Everyone, if they're quick at clicking, these are a bunch of YouTube demos of lots of different parts of Portworx. We can obviously send these out, right? I think these are some pretty cool ones. And and the other thing I missed on this last slide, because we are almost out of time, is we will be maybe one of us will be in Paris. So everyone, go request travel to Paris, because that's where the next KubeCon is in March. And I know I'm doing the same thing. And YouTube links, and then finally that IDC paper. If you scan this, you can get that. That's kind of the call to action. Visit our blog. There's how-to guidance on there, and the IDC, what they say about our tools for container management is pretty good. And JFred, is there? I think Jess is coming in because she knows that I'm just going to keep rambling.
I'm coming in. I'm the Bo Peep hook. I'm the music that's playing. But final thoughts. Yes, let's do it. What do you got for us?
Oh no,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say 2024 is going to be a big year for Kubernetes. I think that's the wrap up for me and hopefully everyone, starts to, if you haven't done it, start embracing it and learning. There's a lot out there that you can do and get up to speed.
You stole my thunder there, Jay. I was about to say almost the exact same thing, but basically, I'm really pleased to have over 130 people on this session to really dig into this topic. I agree wholeheartedly. At the various conferences, people talked about Kubernetes having their Linux moment, about meeting the mainstream, and I think that's really the case. And if you look at where the trends are, those trends are around the concerns that one would have in a mainstream type application. Where can I take advantage of this huge trend in AI? What can I do about security? What can I do about making my data secure? How can I establish the quote unquote paved road or golden pathway? So I think a lot of what you'll see this year is people figuring out their formulas and a more consistent, repeatable recipe from customers as they engage in this marketplace and figure out, hey, this is what I need to do in order to do XYZ, whatever that might be. And so it's an exciting time, and I'm excited to be part of the wave.
It is definitely an exciting time, and you guys have given us so much to think about. I think you've gotten the audience all pumped up and ready. I know that we had to rush through some of those links at the end, so if you missed that slide and you want the team to follow up and kind of send you the links that you missed or the demos, just post in the questions right now. We're going to make sure that all the questions, both the ones that were asked and answered, as well as the ones that we didn't get to, all get sent over to Portworx. So you will get answers back, and that is also where you can request, hey, I missed those demo links. Can you send that to us? But you can also visit the website. Any last final steps, anything else that you'd throw in? Justin, did you have any other kind of calls to action besides what's on the slide there?
No, happy playing in the Kubernetes space and learning. We're all on this journey together. So, yeah.
Perfect. John, any last takeaways from you?
No, he's got it. I think everyone's ready for this gift card. I think that's what they really want.
Yeah. They're like, now I'm just drum rolling the giveaway. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here with us. John, Justin, Fred. It's been such a great time today. Thank you for such a wonderful chat and interactive conversation. I hope we get to chat with you both again soon.
Yeah, and I'm seeing questions that I think are really good. So we'll make sure that we work with you guys to answer some of them, including vector databases. Lots of interesting stuff happening out there, and I'm super excited for all that.
Many more conversations to be had. Thanks, team. All right. And as we just heard from John, he's moderating for me. He's asking all the questions and giving away prizes. This is great. I'm just going to go sit in the back and have a coffee and let these two take over. We do have a prize giveaway, so I am going to get to that. We have a $250 Amazon gift card, but I'm just going to leave this QR code up for a little bit longer. You know what actually I'm going to do is move over to this links page, because there was a lot of links up there, and I think those are really helpful. So I'm just going to leave that up for a second while we do a prize giveaway. Make sure that you guys get a chance to get as many of those open and saved for later as possible. All right, so we are going to give away a $250 Amazon gift card that is going to Bridget Ross from Nevada. Bridget Ross from Nevada. Congratulations to you, Bridget. And as always, we will follow up with you after we wrap. We will also be following up with the winner of the Best Question gift card. And as we heard today, the competition was fierce, so stay tuned for that. All right. Well, with that, on behalf of the actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank Portworx by Pure Storage for making this webinar possible. A giant thank you to John and to Justin, J Fred. You guys knocked it out of the park. What an incredible conversation. I love when we get to kind of go a little bit, as we said, off book and just play with the information a bit, because we really get to see where our speakers' passions lie, right? Where are they excited, and what do they get, think about when they're kind of brainstorming what's coming in the future. And I think we got to kind of come along with Justin and John today on their thought process. And there's so much to think about, and some really, really interesting trends, lots of cool best practices, lots of pointing fingers at some of the challenges and then solutions. This was just a really exciting conversation. I hope that you are all feeling lit up and ready to learn a little bit more. Don't forget to click on that handouts tab. Make sure you click on the handouts tab and get all of those takeaways and follow-ups to the conversations we've had today. That's going to be a great way to continue this sort of thought process. There's a solution brief, there's an overview. You can really dig into how you can run Kubernetes in production, how you can deploy Kubernetes apps with elastic scalability and get that self-service, right? That's a really important thing, that flexibility that you're looking for. And there's a really great walkthrough. We were just talking about some of the challenges and how that can be solved with Portworx. So some of those really commonly faced Kubernetes data storage challenges, and how you can utilize Portworx by Pure Storage to maybe sidestep some of those common challenges. So lots of great takeaways. Make sure you've clicked on those handouts before you take off today. All right, well, with that, my friends, we're going to bring things to a close. What a wonderful day. What an exciting conversation it's been. I hope that we will get to see you all for a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely wonderful end to your day.